Welcome to Afros Audio's Black History Month interview series. My name is Talib Jasir, founder and CEO of Afros and Audio Podcast Festival, the first two-day conference for and by Black independent podcast creatives and audio professionals. I'm excited to spotlight 28 outstanding indie podcast creatives who answered the call to be a part of the series. Today, my guest is Kyla Denanyoh. Welcome, and thank you for being here. How are you?
I am very well, and thank you for including me. I got your email, like you just sent it to me, and I opened it, and I'm like, "Oh, we're fine." So then I get an email back like, "Great, when do you want to talk?" And I was like, "Right, like you get to see the other side, but we're just like, pick me, send your little response." So
Yeah.
it was nice to hear from you.
Okay, awesome. Well, again, the feeling's mutual. Thank you for being a part of this and being willing to be here with me today. I really appreciate that.
Yeah.
So tell us a bit about yourself. We'll definitely get to the podcast, but we want to know a little bit about you.
Okay. So I'm cool. I'm a tattooed lawyer. Okay, I got stuff everywhere. Um, I am an Ohioan. That's a big part of who I am. I'm a mama, I'm a wife, and I was working at a job and I was like, you know what? I think I need something else, right? Like the job is fine, but I need something to like kind of be creative, something to get some outlet going. And I decided to start podcasting and it changed my life. It'll be 3 years in April 2023.
Wow, congratulations.
And thank you. And it's one of the best decisions I made. So
That's awesome. I can't wait to hear more about that best decision. So tell us
yeah.
about You Are a Lawyer podcast.
Yeah. So the You Are Lawyer podcast is a podcast that spotlights law school graduates and everything else they're doing. Right. So when I started the podcast, I was working in a big law firm, but I wasn't a big partner. I wasn't an associate. I wasn't going to court. And I was like, I mean, I am a lawyer, but I'm not practicing as a lawyer. Right. But like I found my law degree showing up everywhere. Somebody would ask me to do something, I would handle it. Then I would look at my charts and I had everything organized, like all this stuff I learned from multitasking, from being in law school, from hustling, but I wasn't actually practicing.
Mhm.
And I was like, I wonder if there's more people like me who are, doing this, people with law degrees who are not actually going to court every day or fighting it out in a big office somewhere. And there are at least 75 people because I've interviewed 74 people for the show. And so I've talked to accountants who also went to law school, nurses, a sculptor. I talked to filmmakers, all these people who go to law school and they either knew they were creative or they forgot how creative they were, or they just opened a business. They started a food truck, right? So my whole point and the entire point of the You Are a Lawyer podcast is, yes, you went to law school, but how does that serve you in your life now? What else are you doing outside of just your job with your degree? So
That's
it's,
awesome.
thank you.
Yeah.
It's fun. And like, just one more plug for me. My podcast is different because I talk to everybody. I talk to Black women, Black men, white men, Indian Americans, Asian Americans. I've talked to lawyers in the UK, lawyers in Nigeria. If you've gone to law school and you are remotely cool and interesting, come and talk to me. Like that's my entire point, is to promote what you're doing outside of just your job.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's awesome. I love the premise of that and the reason behind that and everything like that. Knowing that a lot of people, sometimes we do things based on what we have been told. Some of us are a part of cultures that like, you're gonna be a lawyer and we're not talking about anything else beyond that. Right. And then then that artsy creative aspect of you kind of goes to the side because I'm supposed to do this. This is what I should be doing. This is what I was told that this is where it's at. And so that opportunity for people to kind of separate from, and then some people just wanted to be, that was truly when they started school, they're like, I'm gonna be a lawyer. And then they got there and they were like, I don't want to be a lawyer. you know. So I'm sure you've met a lot of people who run the gamut, and that's what's so cool about podcasts like yours, because there's no single story.
Yeah, absolutely. And what I find the most fascinating about talking to these lawyers, and even looking back at my story, is that lawyers on TV are not the only lawyer you could ever be. Everyone is like, go to law school, make a ton of money. That's why your parents push you. lawyer, doctor, engineer. They just want you to have stability and money.
Right.
Well, I got out of law school and I made far less money than I made when I went to law school because I'm starting over as a newbie.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have no experience as a lawyer, right? And so I worked for 5 years before I went to law school. I was an expert at the time I went to do something else. And now you start off fresh and people are like, great, you're a lawyer for $32,000. Oh, if you weren't making that before, you're just like, okay, well, thank you. Right. So on TV, they have this whole grand view of get out of law school, you can write your own ticket. And a lot of times you can, but it takes a lot more work than they actually show. And to your point, every single story, every aspect of it is going to be different. Mm-hmm. And so it's nice to highlight those stories, to tell people about it, because a lot of the audience, probably 30% is law students, 50% are lawyers, but then 20% are just people with jobs who just want to be inspired by, oh, why did you change your mind? Why were you making $200,000 a year and quit to become a law coach or quit to become a career coach? Like, why would you do that? Because you were miserable, because you were stressed out, because you were alcoholic, because all this stuff from being a lawyer made you change. And so it's fun to kind of flip the script and make people look at things in a different way.
Okay, absolutely. So what would you say you've learned about yourself inside of the process of creating this podcast?
The number one thing I've learned about myself is I am amazing at organizing. Like, I have so many spreadsheets and Airtables and all these things, and I got my guest listed, and I talk to someone, and I'm like, you're booked for March 28th. And they're like, okay, cool. You know what I mean? Like, I have everything in order, but I have to, because I'm just a one-woman show. Find the guests, I record, I edit, I produce, I market it all. And when you do all of that, you have to be organized if you want to keep going. For me, it brings me peace and calm to know that I have it organized, to know that, okay, if so-and-so doesn't show up today, we can either rebook or we can reschedule or whatever. It's not like I'm recording today to put it out tomorrow, right? So the organizational piece of it is one of the things I've learned about myself, but it really makes me happy to know that I could do something brand new and I could keep going with it because I've remained organized.
Yeah, absolutely. And so you would say that's one of your superpowers inside of this. And you say you got it from, would you say you got it from your experience, your work experience, and or is it your personality?
I would say, well, it's definitely not my personality. Okay. I am spontaneous. I would get up and dance right now. Like that, it's definitely not my personality. In fact, that was one of the big rubs when I went to law school. I was like, okay, this is different than anything I've ever done, right? You work a job, you get bored, you can leave in a year, or you do something else, or you cut your hair, you dye it, you can do whatever. And then you're in law school and it's like, you look a certain way, you wear a certain kind of suit, you do this, you have a briefcase, you do all this stuff, right? And even if you don't want to, the judge is going to look at you and wonder. So no, it's definitely not in my personality, but I think I definitely got that from working. I enjoy kind of administrative type tasks. I enjoy being like the help me type role where you're anticipating someone's needs, anticipating their wants, even in the office. And that definitely served me when I was working in law firms, and it served me with podcasting too.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So I'm curious. I get that you are a lawyer. Where did the title come from though for you? And you know, why that name?
Yeah. So this one is a little vulnerable for me. I graduated from law school in 2015, and I was like, great, pass the bar exam, rule the world. Can't wait, right? Don't know what area I'm going to practice in, but I'm going to rule the world. Let's do it. And I struggled with the bar exam. I took it in Louisiana, which is where I went to law school. I didn't pass. I moved to Ohio, waited a year, took it here. I didn't pass. And I'm like, what can I do with this $100,000 degree? I don't. So it took me a couple of years for me to be like, Kyla, you went to law school, you are a lawyer, right? And I literally had to Google the term or find the definition of the word lawyer, which is someone who studies or practices law. So not an attorney. An attorney is someone who is licensed, goes to court, does all the stuff. But an actual lawyer is just someone who studies law. And so I had to tell myself every day, you are a lawyer, you are a lawyer, you are a lawyer. So it was a mantra for myself. Yeah. And then now when I talk to guests, I'm like, you're a lawyer. No, no, no. Like I talked to a lady who went to Yale Law School.
Mm.
I can't even imagine how expensive it was. But she doesn't mention it because she doesn't practice as a lawyer. She never even took the bar exam, right? Like I had this hang up because I failed. She never took it because she knew she didn't want to practice. And she never mentioned her degree. And I'm like, presidents go to Yale. You better talk about this degree, right? And so to be able to encourage her, to motivate her to say, no, you are a lawyer. Yeah, you're not going to court, but you are a lawyer. You have to appreciate how that has changed your life, how that changed everything that you do, right? When I review contracts for sponsors, I got all of that information and all of that understanding from being a lawyer. When I bought a house, I understood some of that because of being a lawyer. Or even if something happens and I need to find a lawyer, I have a network of people, my law classmates and my former my former classmates that I can look up to and contact and say, hey, I need, a referral or whatever. Like I have this whole network behind me. So
that's all awesome. So you call it mantra affirmation. Absolutely. It's you saying, listen, I'm a lawyer. I put in too many late nights.
Yeah.
Cried too many tears for me to say, for you to take this. Absolutely.
Stress, fried bologna sandwiches, ramen, all of it to get this degree. I'm a lawyer.
Yeah. Word. I appreciate that. And I think that is a good message for a lot of people. Because that idea that you aren't is external, it's like, what are other people saying about me because I don't do the status quo, what you get a law degree and then, so that's very important. And I appreciate the fact that that's your message inside of your podcast as well. When it comes to your guests, what do you look for and who do you look for? I mean, obviously person with a law degree and who answers the call, but and you mentioned also if you have a bit of personality, then come see me. That's the requisite as well. But what's been the most fascinating aspect of you talking with people who have the history, the law degree, study law for you?
So that's a really good question because people contact me all the time, and I'm like, you're just no, right? And I'm like, I'm sorry. Yes, you did meet the bare minimum requirement. However, right, you only worked at a law firm for 20 years. You didn't even write a book on the side. That's not, there's 85 other legal podcasts for that. Right. So I want to talk to the person who, did astrophysics and worked at NASA and then went to law school. Right. I want to talk to the people with the compelling stories. And so, the thing that makes a guest interesting really is what else they're doing. What is your lawyer side hustle? Or do you have a story of like perseverance or something that can motivate another person? Because the legal industry it's old. I mean, it's been around for a number of years, but it doesn't change very often. And so what are you doing that either propels the profession forward, that either shows how unique your law degree was, how you can use it in all these different places? Like you start a company for curling irons. Who would have thought about doing that? One day you're practicing family law, next day you're running a business. That's what I want to hear about, because I want to know what triggered you to change your mind. Maybe that will inspire somebody else to change their mind. And even if you're still practicing law, right? I definitely talk to people who continue to practice, but they've done something. They have that side hustle. They have that little surprise that makes them especially intriguing, which makes me want to talk to them, but it also makes people want to listen to their story.
Yeah. It gives people permission almost in a lot of ways, the stories and the people that you talk with. You mentioned earlier your audience and makeup of that. How did you discover that? First of all, I think that's important for podcasters to know that, it is important to know who's listening and why, right? And who would you say that you are talking to the most? Are you talking to all of them or one specific percentage?
Yeah. So I discovered who my followers were through my newsletter. I actually send a newsletter every 2 weeks. It is not easy because I'm putting out episodes every week. I'm putting out YouTube videos every week. And then it's like, oh, that's boring. but they don't see all the part that I'm doing on this side, right? They don't get to see the behind the scenes. And so I send newsletters every 2 weeks, and I'm like, hey, I just talked to these two guests, or a throwback to someone from season 2, just remind people, because you're always getting new people who are signing up. So you just want to remind people of what's going on. But I always put, not always, maybe every quarter, I'll put in a little quiz and say, did you get a new job from listening to the podcast? Were you inspired? What are you doing? And people will say, oh, I'm a law student, or oh, I just graduated, or whatever. And they just tell me, right? People like to know that you either care about what they have to say, or even that you're interested. And a lot of times people will respond to the little surveys and just tell me what they're doing, where they are in their life, whether they're law students, practicing lawyers, or just not at all involved in the legal industry. They just listen and subscribe to the newsletter.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's great that you're talking about this because one of the things that I push a lot is transferable skills, right, from different industries. But I always kind of think about it in the context of media, right? And you are like opening my mind to the fact that, yeah, I have a law degree and I have transferable skill set to engage with my audience and do market research and all that sort of thing, and to be organized enough to sustain my podcast. All those things are important, important aspects of what allows someone to start and then sustain this and continue pushing forward, because podcasting is that long game, and you kind of discover yourself inside of it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I've discovered all kinds of things. Like, for one, I always thought I hated sales. Oh, sales are not for me. I don't care. Marketing doesn't even work for me. If I'm going to buy Oreos, I'm going to buy them. Not really, right? Like, I never would have thought. I like pitching to guests. I like pitching the brand. And even if you tell me no, I'm going to set a reminder for 4 months and follow up. And that is sales, right? Yeah. That's selling yourself. Putting up an Instagram post. Oh, 2 people like it. But especially now on like Twitter, they actually show your impressions. One person liked it. 1,200 people looked at it for at least 2 seconds. Oh, okay. But that is sales, right? Social media is selling yourself. I'm selling the podcast. And so yeah, I definitely discovered that about myself through podcasting. Like, I never would have found that before. And not to ruin your recording, but you had also asked me, do I make the episodes for any specific group of my audience? I didn't answer it. I actually am surprised at the audience. I thought I was making the podcast for burnt out lawyers. Like, people who were just like, I'm over it. Oh, it's been 3 years. I gave it a good chance. What else do I want to do? But I found all these lawyers who were still practicing and just also enjoyed their side hustle. Or I found lawyers who just knew that they didn't have to be all work. They could do something else on the side. So I thought I was making it for the majority of the audience, which is about 50%, which are practicing lawyers. But I'm happy that everybody else is listening too. Law students are listening, and then people who are completely unrelated to the industry are listening.
Yeah, it's great because, we talked about giving people permission, right? But it also presents a possibility for people like, oh, you have a side hustle? Like, I thought that we're just here all day and all night, and you're able to make time for this, and you're able to make time for things that you also love and enjoy. And this society and our socialization doesn't really give us that insight. We have to want it, and we have to experience it, and then move towards it as much as possible. So yeah, I think that's great. I really do. You mentioned earlier, and this was a question I had in the submission form, about how podcasting has changed your life. Can you expand on that a bit?
Yes. So I am sitting here. This is my YouTube corner. So you are a lawyer. The podcast has changed my life because it gave me permission. It reminded me that I was creative, and it has let me know I belong in every space. And I say that, and I'm into my YouTube corner because I make YouTube videos as well. And I started to put up the podcast episodes there, but I also just do book reviews because I'm a big nerd and I read a book. I read about 3 or 4 every week, but I put up a review every week. And I was like, YouTube's not for you. There's no other Black women lawyers here. And I didn't see it as an opportunity, but podcasting was like, no, if there's nobody else, do it now, right? Be the pioneer, be the front runner. I never would have thought about that before. Like, I do find pride in being a nerd and being a tattoo lawyer and all this stuff, but I'm like, but is it interesting? I don't care. I don't care if 5 people watch. Those 5 people wanted to see it. And if it was never there, they would have never saw it. Right. So it definitely changed my life because it just has given me permission. I mean, you use that word, but it really does capture everything that podcasting has done for me because it said, why not? You didn't have a podcast before you started it. So there you go. You didn't have a YouTube before and you started it. And so it's changed my life in those aspects. And then also, I never would have thought that I would enjoy editing audio files, editing video files. Like, I don't consider myself a techie. Apple phone and that's it, right? But I actually enjoy doing those things, and engineering and podcast production and all of that is really technical work. So I never would have imagined that that would have been a part of my life, but it's something that is a part of my everyday life, and I actually enjoy it. So yeah, it gave me permission to see what other things would be interesting to me. Gave me permission to kind of just look around and say, what do you really want to do? Well, I read a good book. I want to tell somebody about it. I'm gonna do it. Or I just met a really cool lawyer. I want to tell someone about it. I'm gonna do it. So yeah, that's how it's changed.
Yeah, it brings to mind the saying that we can only see how far we go as we're willing to go far. We just keep going, and that's how we see what our limitations are, what we are capable of. We collect that new evidence about ourselves, and applying it is the biggest part of that. Collecting the evidence and then saying, okay, yeah, I do have this. I can do that. Yeah, absolutely. And I'm glad you touched back on the editing piece because that is something that we have found that gets a lot of creatives outside of, having their podcast active in the market because they signed up to be on the mic. They didn't sign up for all the other stuff. And now I have to learn this and try to do this. And I can tell you I was on a 1-hour flight this morning and I was able to get through 2 minutes of my editing. I mean, of the file,
Yeah.
By the time I touched down, it was 2 minutes and 10 seconds had gone by in the audio file. And I'm like, but I've been at this for an hour, so it can't be tedious, but it's a part of what I discovered about myself is that it's a part of the creative aspect of it. I actually enjoy the creation of the editing. And so when we're able to kind of connect all those, because a lot of times we do a lot and we do the most, we think that they're disjointed, and they're all relative. They all kind of go together. So that's cool that you're enjoying it. Because a lot of people forget this.
But I will tell you this. You had mentioned earlier that podcasting is you got to be in it for the long haul. I didn't enjoy it up front, right? But also, I couldn't pay anyone to do it. And then when I thought I could pay someone to do it, they were like, what do you want it to sound like? Sound like the other one. No, what do you? And I was like, oh, well, now I can't pay you to do it because I can't describe what I want it to sound like.
Yeah.
So I had to teach myself to enjoy doing it, to enjoy knowing that at the end it's going to be this polished episode that everyone can listen to and knowing, you know what I mean? They don't know how many you removed or how many calls or someone's phone was ringing, but and so you got to kind of enjoy the transformation of it going from this to that.
Absolutely. It's a learning curve and it's something that, you stick with it, you'll get it. You don't stick with it, like most things, you won't get it. It's really simple, but it also goes, I do, very much encourage folks that if that's not your wheelhouse and you know it, do what you need to do.
It's true.
Respect that. So, so we talked about things that you've kind of learned about yourself, and learned about your guests and that sort of thing. Is there anything that you would want to impart on podcasters, whether aspiring and or veteran podcasters, that you have learned through this process of podcasting that's allowed you to be whatever measure of success that you have for yourself?
Yes. So the fancy thing that I want to say is perseverance. And the regular thing I want to say is just don't quit. Just keep going. I mean, if it's really hard for you to edit that first episode, to your point, find someone who can do it or just take your time. Like we put all this pressure on ourselves. Said it was going to be out February 1st. It has to go out February 1st. But nobody knows. If it comes out February 5th, it still comes out. Right? So don't quit. Keep going. When I first started podcasting, I hoped I could get through a season. I didn't know how long the season was going to be. I was just going to go until I was tired and I was going to take a break. And it ended up being 16 interviews. And I was like, well, I'll keep doing 16 interviews. And so I only got there because I didn't quit. I kept going. I was like, okay, I got this guest. Now let me try to get another one. Oh, like those first recordings, they're really hard to listen to. So they have the cringe factor because you're like I was nervous. I wasn't actually listening to the guest. I was just reading my, okay, next. And I'm like, there was no engagement. But I could only get to where I am now because I've been doing it for almost 3 years because I didn't quit. Right. So again, perseverance, just push through. Just don't quit. Get 1% better every single day. Today you did an hour of editing, 2 minutes was worth. Tomorrow you'll do another edit. You know what I mean? Another hour. Like you gotta keep going. If this is really what you want to do. And if I can do a bonus, because I just thought of something.
Please.
Call yourself a podcaster. That's the next really, really big thing. Veteran or newbie. Because if you get up and you're like, oh, this is terrible. I'm not making another graphic. I don't care. Oh, but I'm a podcaster. What would a podcaster do? A podcaster would make a graphic. A podcaster would edit for an hour. A podcaster would try to find a guest. You know what I mean? Call yourself a podcaster because if you even put out one episode, if you bought your domain, probably you're a podcaster and you need to acknowledge that the things you do, that's who you are. So even if you got 3 episodes, if you have 300, call yourself a podcaster. Don't be like, oh, I got to do this thing for my podcast. Yeah, I'm a podcaster. I got to go do some work for podcasting.
Yeah.
Call yourself a podcaster.
Yeah, absolutely. It's I can resonate with that, and just this conference itself, it's a responsibility. I open my big mouth, so I'm gonna do it. And now it's my responsibility to do it, and to do it in excellence, and to do it with the vision and the commitment that I started with. And you're right, when you call yourself to that high point, whatever it is that you are looking to create or be or become, we said it, we are whoever we say we are, and we get to move accordingly.
Yeah.
So yeah, I love that. What would you say is your biggest podcast win to date?
My biggest podcast win. Ooh, I even was prepared. I had some stuff written down, but I would honestly say is all of the Black lawyers that I get to promote. I think that's my biggest podcast win. So I went to an HBCU law school, which is a historically Black college and university. And so my first interview or my first episode was me talking to talking to the audience. But since then, I've even gotten to the point where I interview 2 graduates from my own law school because I'm constantly pushing us, constantly propelling the fact that Black lawyers are out here doing incredible things. Like we talked earlier about the difference in the lawyers that you see on TV not being the regular real life lawyers. Well, only 5% of all lawyers in the United States of America are Black. They would check that little box saying African American or Black. That is a tiny amount. So no matter who comes on, this person reaches out to me, that person, whatever, I always make sure I talk to someone who went to at least my law school, which is Southern University Law Center. And then in addition to someone from my school, I try to talk to somebody else who went to a Black school because there's only 6 of them in the country. Out of 133 law schools, only 6 of them are HBCUs. And so that's my biggest win, right? Because I talk to people that have 3 million followers on YouTube and all these things. I talked to this guy who was like, even if 1% of my audience listens, that's like 300,000 people. And I'm like, sure. But also, y'all gonna get this HBCU law schools in here too, because I see Black lawyers everywhere because I'm a Black lawyer. I follow Black lawyers. I talk to Black lawyers, right? But a lot of people either don't know we exist, don't care that we exist, right? A lot of people only bother themselves with things that like immediately are of interest to them. So I make sure that I'm always promoting lawyers that went to HBCU law schools and lawyers that went to my law school. So that's definitely my biggest win, to stay consistent in that for 5 seasons.
Yeah, that's awesome. 5 seasons. Wow. And then I'll go ahead and throw out the 8,000 download.
So I'm glad you mentioned that, because in my mind, right, I'm gonna put out this podcast and then the right person's gonna share it and I'm gonna get 8,000 in a week. I'm gonna my phone's just gonna be blowing up. I gotta turn off notifications because podcasting seems easy. Okay, you do a recording, you put it up, and it's a hustle. It's a grind, especially if I think for me, because I think that I'm actually putting out a message, and so I actually want people to listen, right? Like it's not just like a social commentary podcast or anything. I'm like, no, it's actually some work behind it. I got outlines and all this stuff. So yeah, I got to 8,000 downloads earlier this month, and that blew my mind because for one, that's not just my immediate family. That's people actually listening, and I'm like, okay. I was like, all right, okay, I'm not just working for nothing. People are listening. But also, I know I've been working. I know every single week I'm talking to someone, I'm editing, I'm doing whatever. And the fact that 8,000 people have seen it, or at least heard, you know what I mean, 2 minutes of it, blows my mind. But it's something that I definitely celebrate too, because I think it gives me, for one, it helps me remain grateful that all these people are listening, but it helps me to remember not to quit. Because if I can get to 8,000, I can get to 16,000, I can get to 32,000. And then people were just, you know, talking about you are a lawyer and learning from it. And that's the whole point.
Yeah, yeah. And I think even especially for podcasts that has guests, right? You interview these people for a reason, right? And they deserve to be heard. When we have podcasters, and it's understandable, it is that process of starting something, and maybe as a creative, you started and stopped a million times certain things, and there's shame around. You know, we have this. Some of us have these repressive buttons that get pushed, like "Who do you think you are?" You know, and all that sort of thing that kind of sneaks up in the head. It's like nobody, you know. Actually, I'm sorry for speaking, but it deserves, you know, it deserves to go, you know, it deserves to be heard. And the people that you're interviewing, you did it because you thought that they had something to say.
Absolutely.
So why hide it?
Yeah, for real. And another thing that I really appreciate about having 8,000 downloads, I stopped myself. I was about to say only 8,000, but ain't no only. Another thing I really like is I am on my third sponsor. You do not have to have 8,000 downloads a week to get paid sponsors.
Yeah, you
I have a health and wellness. Yeah. You do not have to have a ton of downloads to get a paid sponsor. If someone sees value in your show, because podcasting is special, you are in someone's ear, they think you are talking to them. You sent an email about this, you want to be, yeah, of course I do. There could have been 100 other people responding, but I only was in control of my application. Here we go, let me send it, right? And so for podcasting, you're in someone's ear and they're like, oh, I don't think I should try that. I'm going to try it, right? I'm talking to 8,000 people. You'll know it. But that's the special thing about podcasting. So I'm working with a health and wellness sponsor right now. I've also had some advertisements from law firms. And then earlier I had one from like a virtual, you know, job placement company, because they're like, the people that are listening to your show are law students who will eventually need a job, lawyers who want to pivot, or just anybody else. And they were like, you know what? I bet someone in those, that 20% of the people who are listening and not related will either find value, or the 70% that are related to legal things will definitely find value. Right? So yeah, I celebrate all of those downloads because it doesn't affect you getting money. It doesn't affect you getting a bag or any of it. Because if someone finds value in it, they'll pay you for it.
Yeah, for sure. And so that is one of like the sticking points for a lot of podcasters, and also why I really believe that podcasting has an entrepreneurial spirit to it, right? And so a lot of people who get involved, especially folks that look like me and you, it's like, okay, how can I gain something from this, monetize it, profit from it? Because it becomes either another stream of income or a primary stream of income, but it doesn't happen immediately, right? And
Mhm.
so these advertisers and sponsors, I do want to go into just a little bit because there are people who are kind of stuck in that space. And I think when we think about podcasting and while we're celebrating like all these celebrity podcasts and all that sort of thing, it also provides this unrealistic out the gate goal. Like I'm going to come out and it's going to be, a million downloads and
Yeah.
everybody's coming, like you said. And then a whole week goes by and you're like, my mama didn't even listen. It's like, and I told her ass about it. Yeah. So it's like, it's a process. You decide to be intentional about monetization. And how'd you go about like that first pitch?
Yeah. So I can say this. I was lucky with the first pitch because it was a podcast guest and they were like, we were talking, and then for about 5 minutes after every interview, I'm like, oh, your episode will be out on this day. Any questions for me? And they were like, yeah, have you worked with sponsors? And I was like, oh, not yet, but I'm working on it. I can't wait. Oh, no, I meant like, do you want a sponsor? Yeah. Yes, I
Amazing.
did. Right. And I'm trying to not look like a newbie, like, oh, I'll send you my media kit. This is great. Right. So I worked up this whole thing. I think it was like 7 pages. I got graphics, I got this, I got all this stuff. I didn't know what I was doing. And it was beautiful. And I sent it and they were like, great. My budget is this. Can you just make an ad for this? And I was like, well, that was easy, right? I was like, oh, I didn't even realize that. And so ever since then, I've started to ask people, what is your budget? So I can just set my expectations. Because
Mhm.
some people, a little mom and pop law firm might want to just give you $50 an episode. I'll just casually mention you or say you're a friend of the podcast. So I got started. It was kind of a lucky break because somebody just said, hey, if I'm on here, I found the time in my day to talk to you. I bet other people will listen. And even if I get 2 people to sign up, that's worth it. So they found me. And then from there, I started to really look and say, could this really be something? And I can tell you, I have not sent out my media kit since then because now people are just like, I've listened to it. Someone shared it with me. Someone shared it on LinkedIn. I saw it somewhere. I know it's out there. And I would like for people to just show my name when they're mentioning your name. So the first one was luck. But ever since then, I've started to ask people, what's your budget? So I can set my expectation. And then I can't say I did turn down one sponsor because they were just asking for a lot of stuff and they didn't realize how much work it would be. They wanted 4 Instagram reels and a whole season of pre-rolls. And I was like, yeah, that's what you offered was a little bit, I can't meet it right now.
Mhm.
But right after that, I found someone else and it was better than that offer. But I was proud of myself that I was actually able to say, for the amount of work this is going to take, I can't do it. Because at first, when you're hungry and you're just like,
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
gonna do it. Let me just, give me the $200, and then you're kicking yourself later because you're like, this wasn't this.
Yeah.
Uh
Yes.
uh
Yeah.
I'm stressed out now because I told you I didn't already spent the $200, and I
Mhm.
still got to finish working. So yeah, so it wasn't. I don't know if I had ever thought I was going to monetize just because for me it was such a passion project. I would do it for free because I was doing it for free.
Mhm.
But then when someone offered to pay me for it, I was like, well, this is great. Now I'm to the point I wouldn't stop doing it if it was, if it goes back to not having a paid sponsor. But also it was nice to know somebody would pay for it.
Yeah. No, and I think your story is important because we tend to complicate a lot of things that not doesn't necessarily have to be complicated. And we also create story around, I need this amount of downloads. I need to, be able to do this and perform this when it happens. And you've never done nothing. So you just literally created a story that stopped you before you even started.
Yeah.
And so it's important to hear that story. So thank you for sharing it. Yeah, because I want to see more folks being able to monetize, because it is possible, from the minor to the major. But
Mhm.
also, I love that you brought up the mom and pops, because I think that we kind of neglect all of the smaller opportunities around us for looking for that, thing that you saw on television that someone else got,
Yeah.
that someone else got, which is great. And that means that it's possible for you. But there's so many ways in which other ways are possible as well. And sometimes they start right in your local, your regional areas and that sort of thing. So that's a big
Yeah.
deal. Yeah.
In fact, I would say that most of them start regional, right? Like I can mention my daughter twice on the podcast, but Pampers is not going to buy a whole season. I'm
Right.
not on their radar yet. Like
Mhm.
I need to start with something small, and then people start, you know what I mean? They need to get your name. Like there are some flukes where you end up on the Today Show because something blew up.
Mhm.
But a lot of times that's because someone went viral. Can you sustain that? Like that's not necessarily what you want.
Yeah.
You probably need to start off smaller and have this. You have like a book of work. Look who I've worked with. I've worked with all these different people. Now you can then, for one, you have the confidence to ask
Yeah.
someone else, but also you can do the work.
Absolutely.
Because when people give you money, I don't care if it's $25, they're gonna want a preview copy. They're going to call you out if you don't put it on one of the episodes. You need to make sure you can do the work before someone gives you this huge budget of stuff, and then you're either sponsored or can't deliver. So it's
Yeah.
even good for us to build ourselves up as we start monetizing and getting sponsors.
Absolutely. And, there was some advice given. We had a summer social, Black Podcast Association, and Anthony Frazier from ABF Creative
Mm-hmm.
was the speaker. And he said, you can take something that comes in small at $25 and make it look grand for that
Mm-hmm.
next opportunity. Right. And so really wanting folks to understand that there are more than one way to turn something out and to get to that goal. So
Yeah.
again, I appreciate that story, and congratulations on the sponsor
Thank you.
that you've had. Um, so I just have a few more questions.
Okay.
Were there any 2023 podcast goals that you had thought about at the beginning of the year, that you are kind of being intentional around creating this year?
Yeah, definitely. So I took the podcast weekly from being a bi-weekly show in October 2022. So one of my goals for 2023 is to consistently put out an episode every single week.
Okay.
And that I did not think that was a big push. A lot of people are like, oh, if you do weekly episodes, it's twice as many downloads, right? And that part is kind of true. But also, it's a lot more work, especially when you're interviewing people. Because I don't, what am I trying to say? I can't turn around my episode in a day. Some days I'm gonna edit for an hour, next day I'm gonna edit for 5. I have life, I have all this stuff. And so to put out an episode every single Thursday, 52 episodes, that's a push. That's a real push, especially because my seasons are 16 episodes. So that's gonna be like 2.5 seasons. So that's a lot of work in one year. So my goal for 2023 is to continue with these weekly episodes every single week. My other big goal is that I want to stick with the YouTube videos. I thought I was starting YouTube, just to kind of branch out. I started doing podcasting. Why not turn on the camera? Which was hard for me because my whole thing was you don't even got to put on lipstick to podcast. It's easy. And
Right.
then you start doing the video, and it's like, well, you kind of want to look a certain way. Um, but I did that, and the reason why that's going to continue for 2023 is because lawyers are everywhere, and people consume content everywhere. Somebody is not going to ever listen to a podcast, and that's okay. Because for every best-selling book, somebody hates it,
Right.
right? So I have to just get my content out wherever I think people can consume it. YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, podcasts, whatever, because I want people to find it. I want people to say, lawyers are kind of cool. Oh, I never thought lawyers could do that, or oh, whatever.
Mhm.
So that's another big push for 2023.
Okay, those are awesome goals. Any support you need from the community, we're here for it, for sure. So last question. You attended and you were actually a speaker at the 2021 Afros and Audio Podcast Festival. Can you talk a
Yeah.
little bit about that experience?
Yes. So that was great. And I can send you a clip because I actually did like a time lapse of me recording. I'm like in my daughter's room on a cramp thing.
All right.
Um, but it was a lot of fun because it was a virtual conference because everything was still weird. And I talked about being booked and busy. And I'm happy to say that it's still the same. I like to book out a whole season before I even start. It just gives me comfort to just know I have this stuff just sitting here. But I love being at the conference. For one, I had a lot of good questions that people were asking me. They're like, okay, your picture's fine. What? Right? You put up your little PowerPoint. You like, I did it. And people, what about this? What about this? So I'm like, people are listening. People are engaging. People, I was like, okay, this is kind of cool. So the experience was wonderful. Like it was great to talk to the audience. It was really nice to engage with people. And then I was able to pop around in a couple of the other sessions. And it's nice to hear from other people who are podcasting because it's not all a struggle and it's not all huge success. Some people are like, I'm just still doing it and that's fine. Or like there were speakers who were talking about being monetized, of course, but then there's other speakers who were like, what if you don't ever want to? What if you don't want to run it as a business? What if you just want to podcast for the fun of podcasting? You can do that too.
Absolutely.
Right. So the conference really showed me that there is a space for everyone in podcasting, whatever it is that you want. There's a space for people that look like me, people that look like you. It's not just this whole thing you see everywhere. Like I swear, every time I'm in the car, I hear that somebody else has a podcast. And I'm like, where were y'all 3 years ago? Like podcasting is the thing now. But what I appreciated about the Afros and Audio conference was that we weren't doing it as a fad or a gimmick. It was people who were really podcasting who just wanted to share their experiences and other people were listening to it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I definitely appreciate you sharing your expertise and your knowledge. You absolutely, I love your energy. I appreciate you for bringing it with you because you woke me up and I needed to be woken up today. So thank you.
Yeah.
Are there any podcasts that you listen to that you want to shout out?
Yes. One of my favorites is a podcast called Rich and Regular. That one is a husband-wife duo, and they're talking about money, but honestly, hearing them talking about just like compromising in life is one of my favorite parts. But they talk about how, you can live next to a millionaire and you don't know it. They don't have to be the showy people that you see on TV, somebody that has a Bugatti or whatever. It can just be the regular lady who's couponing. And so they just talk about being rich and regular. And it's one of my favorite podcasts. It's really good.
All right. Thank you. We got to check that out.
And it's a Black couple too.
That's awesome. That makes it even better. That makes it even better. So is there anything, I know we talked about the newsletter, we talked about the podcast, anything else that you want to, in the YouTube channel, anything else you want to push out there, promote, let people know about?
Just my social media accounts. Feel free to follow me at You Are a Lawyer on Instagram and on Twitter. If you are interested in lawyers, if you just want to see me dancing around when I finish the episode, I think I'm very entertaining. But yeah, follow me on social media. And if you are interested in books, lawyers, any of the stuff, follow me on YouTube. It's just my name, Kyla Denanyoh, and you can find all kinds of cool stuff there. So.
Okay, absolutely. And we'll be putting all that information in the description. So looking forward to people being able to discover you and get more of Kyla because you're great. And I thank you. I appreciate you for joining me today.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it because I don't look like your regular lawyer. And that's the whole point. So yeah, I hope I'm changing.
I don't look like your regular founder either. But and that's is that we get to be who we want. We get to create what it is that we want. I say that the world is now it's gone to 8 billion. It used to be 7 billion, but now we're 8 billion. And so the fact that an idea comes to you specifically, it could have went to any of the other 8 billion. So it's ours to realize and push it forward and get out of our heads,
Yep.
And that's easier said than done. It took me a long time to realize that, but now that I have, I'm having a great time. Yeah. All right, I'm going to close this out and you just please hang out just a little bit more, okay?
Okay.
I want to give a big thanks to our Afros in Audio and Black podcast community for supporting our commitment for community and collaboration. If you'd like to join the Black Podcasters Association, the link will be in the description below. And if you want to join us at the 5th annual Afros in Audio Podcast Festival, visit bit.ly/AFAU FAQ, which will also be in the description. Follow us on all social media channels at Afros in Audio. And thanks again, Kyla, for joining us today and for being a part of the Afros in Audio's first ever Black History Month interview series. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
All right. All right. Until next time.
All right.